welcome back to Counting the Costs, your weekly business stop here on Al Jazeera. We look to the skies now and the failed attack on that Northwest Airlines flight bound for Detroit on Christmas Day, which has forced the aviation industry to increase its screening of passengers. Many are now considering the full-body scanners, the cost of which, though, may well be picked up by you, the passenger, in the form of higher ticket prices. Nazanin Moshiri reports now from one airport already toughening up its own security measures.
This is one of the airports that wants body scanners. Like London and Amsterdam, Copenhagen is a transit hub to the US. EU experts will be deciding on whether other nations in the bloc should follow. It seems that Denmark has already made up its mind. It sees itself as a potential target. The head of security here thinks new scanners would help.
We think it's extremely important that you are assured when you are taking a flight from Copenhagen or any airport in Europe or in the world. Basically, it's this transportation form which is in threat right now, and I think it's important that you accept that security measures are here to stay.
The Commission's approach is likely to be a cautious one. The EU wants to assess whether the machines can fit into legislation. Its decision won't affect Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, which already has 15 scanners. An extra 60 are on the way. Spain and Germany are less keen, ruling them out for now. The machines use radio waves to see through a person's clothing. There are concerns about what that could mean for privacy, and radiation levels could also be an issue.
I think I have the right to board a plane without having people to check this, that and the other.
For the security, I would do it. I would accept it, yes.
Passengers at European airports are going to have to get used to tough new measures. Measures that will change their experience of air travel forever. That experience will be even more difficult for Muslim passengers, particularly those on a US list of more than a dozen countries. In this new era of profiling, they will be picked out of the crowd.
So who is going to pick up the cost of all these new security measures? We'll discuss that now with John Strickland of aviation consultants JLS in London. John, thank you for your time. Can you put a figure or a value on this sort of thing, on what airlines and airports are having to spend on security?
It's difficult to put a precise figure on the amount spent because, of course, it varies by airport and airline around the world. What we can say, however, it's a very significant cost. It's an unavoidable cost for airlines and airports, and sadly as well, in a climate when the whole aviation industry is having a very tough time economically, this is a cost which is actually rising and likely to rise again as a result of a recent attempted attack on Christmas Day.
So are the full-body scanners we saw in the report, are they the solution to this problem? And out of interest, if I was going to buy one, how much would it cost?
Well, body scanners, which are being talked about now, are possibly introduced at a number of airports, including London Heathrow Airport in the next few weeks, are part of a solution, but really there needs to be a range of processes and actions to maximise the chance of a secure airline operation. It has to be said also that body scanner machines are quite expensive, in the region of around about 80 to 100,000 British pounds. So a large international airport which may have to buy a number of these pieces of equipment is going to have quite significant extra cost, running into maybe hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars. Which is something,
You know, the big hubs like a Heathrow or a Dubai or a Singapore could probably handle. Regional airports, though, could they pick up those sorts of costs? As I understand it, some long-haul flights which make stops into those airports might balk at the cost because the margins are very, very thin.
Well, all airports and airlines are having a very difficult time economically. Some airports, for example, one in the UK, Coventry Airport, recently closed. That again reflects the difficulty of the climate. Of course, we've seen significant numbers of airline bankruptcies and widening losses for the airline industry. And customers travelling in many parts of the world, whether they're on long-haul or short-haul flights, are choosing to do so really only if they're tempted by sufficiently low fares. So given that economic backdrop and the reality of the market for customers, where prices are low and profits are limited or largely non-existent for the industry, it's difficult to pass on these kind of cost increases to the end customer, the traveller buying the ticket. We also have to understand, though, that governments, who arguably have the ultimate responsibility for security policy in aviation and indeed elsewhere, are perhaps understandably, from a political point of view and their own budget point of view, reluctant to pick up the tab on this. But simply to push this onto the shoulders of the air transport and air travel community is really a very difficult problem to resolve.
So with that in mind, how would you recommend going about solving this security problem and doing it in a remotely cost-effective way? Security is important, obviously, but cost is key as well.
Well, certainly airlines will face potential cost increases from a number of the airports they use. They will find it difficult to pass on those costs to the end customer. I think the one part of the solution has to be a very sensible approach of getting around the table from all interested parties, the security services, government agencies, airports and airlines, industry representatives, looking at the whole issue of security and how it can be done efficiently. Because on the one hand, while security is dictated very much by terrorist attacks, which are arguably actually focused on governments and states, simply using airlines as an unfortunate vehicle in their objectives, it's not necessarily the key focus of a government or a security authority to think about what the cost is of delivering that. However, if they simply kill off airlines at airports in the process because they're financially weak already, then nothing has been achieved. So it needs a bit of sitting around the table, sharing of ideas, looking at issues about availability of intelligence information, looking at non-capital expenditure means of improving security, finding ways to address the need for tightened security, which doesn't also disrupt the process of handling passengers, causing airlines further flight delays and therefore worsening the experience for travellers and possibly causing people to think twice about flying in some cases.
Aviation consultant John Strickland there, thanks for your time. Now, if you are tech savvy, you might be familiar with the phrase iPod killer, or more latterly, iPhone killer. Basically, any product which could possibly rival those two very successful icons from the computing giant Apple. Well, another computing giant, Google, has now fired the opening salvo in its bid to knock Apple from its perch, or indeed from its tree. Todd Bayer now with a look at Google's new phone, the Nexus One.
Search giant Google jumping headfirst into the mobile phone market, ringing in the new year with a new smartphone called Nexus One. The company introduced the device at its California headquarters on Tuesday. Built by Taiwanese manufacturer HTC, it runs the latest version of Google's Android operating system.
Better devices means more people are accessing the web. And when more people access the web and the internet, that's good for users, of course, it's good for the internet, and it's really good for Google as well.
Nexus One adds another dimension to Google's internet empire, which already includes Google Search, Google Earth, Google Maps, Google News, and Google Voice. Google, it seems, is everywhere, at your computer and now in your hand.
And I pan back and forth. As you can see,
the introduction of Nexus One, the software company's first foray into selling hardware, reflects Google's effort to expand advertising sales on mobile devices in the United States, a market that is expected to increase to between $2 and $3 billion by 2013.
They're seeing that if they get into that part of the market as well, they will also generate a lot of money. So they're making a shift. As technology is evolving and changing, they're recognizing that and making a shift.
Google's offering enters a direct competitor of Apple's iPhone and other phones that already run Google's Android operating system. Cellular phones in the United States are generally sold locked to specific carriers. But Google's phone is not limited to a specific cellular network.
This is their attempt at really changing the game, and what changes it is trying to do it, at least initially, without a partner.
In an age where the next must-have device is always just around the corner, the Nexus One won't be the newest toy on the block for long. Instead, its release may eventually be remembered as the day the disruptive force of Google fully entered the mobile market.
And that is just about it for this week. This is our webpage, though, at aljazeera.net/English. You'll find it by clicking on the programs link on the front page. My weekly blog is up there for you to read, as well as previous episodes of the show, all of it as ever at aljazeera.net/English. But that is it from Counting the Cost. I'm Kamal Santamaria from the whole team. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.